A quick heads up before we dive in. This story explores unsettling psychological themes and touches on experiences that some may find deeply disturbing. What if the reflection staring back wasn't yours? What if the glass didn't just show you but showed you something else? Something that seemed to watch back, waiting. This isn't a ghost story in the traditional sense, or at least it didn't start that way. It began with an antique, a bargain, and a group of friends who were just trying to make a house a home. Michael and Jessica had just bought their first house in Willow Creek, a charming, quiet town nestled in the heart of upstate New York. It wasn't a mansion, but a sturdy two-story colonial built in the 1950s, with a sprawling backyard and the kind of creaky floorboards that whispered stories of generations past. They were in their late 20s, brimming with that infectious optimism that comes with new beginnings. Michael, a software engineer, was practical and grounded, while Jessica, a freelance graphic designer, had an eye for aesthetics and a love for anything with a history. Their closest friend, David, was a history professor at the local community college, with a passion for antiquities and a knack for finding hidden gems in dusty corners. It was David, in fact, who suggested they hit up the annual Willow Creek Antiques Fair to find unique pieces that would give their new home character. "Forget those big box stores," he declared, gesturing grandly with a half-eaten bagel. "Your home deserves a soul, not just furniture." Jessica, always up for an adventure, was thrilled. Michael, ever the pragmatist, was more concerned about their budget, but even he couldn't deny the allure of finding something truly special. So, on a crisp Saturday morning in early October, the three of them found themselves weaving through crowded stalls, the scent of old wood and forgotten spices hanging heavy in the air. They'd spent hours sifting through everything from chipped porcelain figurines to vintage typewriters, finding a few interesting trinkets but nothing that truly called to them. Just as Michael was starting to check his watch, signaling his readiness to depart, David let out a triumphant gasp. He was standing in front of a small, unassuming stall tucked away at the very end of the fair, almost hidden behind a mountain of old rugs. "Look at this," David breathed, his voice hushed with reverence. Jessica and Michael pushed through the dwindling crowd to join him. There, leaning against a rickety wooden table, was a mirror. It was unlike anything they'd seen that day. It wasn't particularly large, maybe 3 feet tall by 2 feet wide. Framed in dark, intricately carved wood that seemed to writhe with swirling, almost organic patterns. The wood was so dark it was almost black, and felt impossibly smooth to the touch. The glass itself was perfectly clear, yet somehow unnervingly deep. It didn't just reflect, it seemed to absorb light, pulling your gaze inward. "It's intense," Jessica said, a slight shiver running down her spine despite the warm autumn sun. She saw her reflection, and for a split second, it felt like her eyes were a shade darker, her smile a touch more knowing. She blinked. The illusion vanished. Michael, usually more reserved, found himself drawn to it. He reached out and touched the frame. The wood was cool, almost cold, even though the fair was bustling around them. "How old do you think it is, David?" David, already examining the back, ran a gloved finger along a faint, almost illegible inscription. "Judging by the carving style and the patina, I'd say late 18th, early 19th century. European, probably French or Italian. And the silvering, it's incredibly well preserved." He looked up, his eyes gleaming. "This is a find, guys. A real find." The elderly woman running the stall, her face a roadmap of wrinkles, emerged from behind a stack of antique lace. She had eyes that seemed to see right through you. "Ah, the looking glass," she said, her voice raspy yet strangely melodic. "It has chosen you, I see." Michael frowned. "Chosen us?" She simply smiled, a thin, knowing curve of her lips. "Some objects, young man, have a way of finding their rightful owners. This one, it has waited a long time." She named a price that was shockingly low for an antique of such apparent quality. Michael, ever suspicious of a deal that seemed too good to be true, hesitated. But Jessica, captivated by the mirror's strange allure, was already reaching for her wallet. "It's perfect for the entryway," she declared, her enthusiasm overriding any doubts. "It'll make the space feel so much bigger, and it's truly unique." Before Michael could voice his reservations, the transaction was complete. The old woman watched them carefully as they carefully wrapped the mirror in a moving blanket Michael had in the car. As they walked away, Michael glanced back. She was still standing there, watching, her smile gone, replaced by an expression he couldn't quite decipher. It was a look of profound sadness, perhaps, or maybe regret. He shook it off. It was just an old woman and an old mirror. Transporting the mirror was surprisingly difficult. It was far heavier than its size suggested, requiring all three of them to carefully maneuver it into the back of Michael's SUV. Once home, they decided to hang it in the spacious entryway, just as Jessica had envisioned. It was the first thing you saw when you walked through the front door, reflecting the grand staircase and the wide archway leading into the living room. It instantly transformed the space, adding an undeniable sense of elegance and depth. The first few days were filled with the usual chaos of moving. Boxes everywhere, takeout dinners, and the constant hum of unpacking. The mirror settled into its new home, a silent observer. They'd catch their reflections in passing, admiring its beauty, feeling pleased with their unconventional purchase. Then things started. Subtly, almost imperceptibly at first, Jessica was the first to notice something amiss. She was standing in front of the mirror, adjusting her hair before heading out to meet a client. She glanced at her reflection, then past it, towards the living room behind her. She was sure she saw a fleeting shadow drift across the far wall, a movement that was too quick, too fluid to be one of their cats. She spun around, but the living room was empty, bathed in the soft morning light. "Must be tired," she mumbled to herself, shaking her head. A few days later, Michael had a similar experience. He was walking downstairs, looking down at his phone, when he looked up just as he passed the mirror. In his periphery, he saw his reflection turn its head slightly, just a fraction of a second before he did. He stopped, staring intently into the glass. His reflection stared back, perfectly still, perfectly mirroring him. He dismissed it as an optical illusion, a trick of light and movement. But a prickle of unease lingered. David, who often dropped by to help with unpacking and offer unsolicited decorating advice, began to feel it too. He was admiring the mirror one afternoon, tracing the intricate carvings with his finger. He swore he could hear a faint whisper, like dry leaves skittering across pavement, coming from directly behind the glass. He leaned closer, straining his ears, but the sound vanished. "Did you guys hear that?" he asked Michael and Jessica, who were wrestling with the stubborn box in the living room. "Hear what?" Michael grunted, pulling at a flap. "Nothing, I guess," David said, feeling foolish. He shrugged it off, attributing it to the old house settling, or perhaps his own overactive imagination. He was, after all, a scholar of ancient mysteries, prone to seeing patterns where none existed. But the incidents began to escalate, becoming less easy to dismiss. Jessica started having vivid, unsettling dreams. Not nightmares exactly, but dreams where she was always just out of reach of something important, or where familiar faces wore expressions of profound sadness and accusation. She'd wake up feeling drained, as if she hadn't slept at all, and the lingering feeling of dread would cling to her throughout the day. She noticed these dreams always seemed to follow a long period of time spent in the entryway, or just after she'd spent a moment gazing into the mirror. One evening, Michael was home alone, working on his laptop in the living room. The house was quiet, save for the gentle hum of the refrigerator. He got up to grab a glass of water, passing the mirror. As he glanced at his reflection, he saw something else behind him, in the reflected image of the hallway. A fleeting, indistinct shape, tall and slender, standing just at the edge of the frame. His blood ran cold. He whirled around, heart pounding. The hallway was empty, bathed in the soft glow of the nightlight. Nothing, just the shadows playing tricks. He told himself that, but his hands were shaking as he poured the water. He tried to rationalize it all. The stress of moving, lack of sleep, an old house full of creaks and groans. But the mirror was always there, an elegant, silent presence, reflecting their growing unease. They started to avoid looking directly into it, preferring to catch glimpses, or simply walk past without acknowledging the dark glass. It was beautiful undeniably, but there was something about it that was starting to feel wrong. The argument started then, small at first, like tiny cracks in a foundation. Michael would snap at Jessica over something trivial, or Jessica would accuse Michael of not listening, her voice tinged with an irritation that felt disproportionate to the offense. They were usually a harmonious couple, quick to resolve conflicts, but now these spats felt sharper, leaving behind a lingering resentment. Each time after the argument, one of them would invariably find themselves standing near the mirror, perhaps subconsciously drawn to its cool, dark surface, feeling a strange mixture of anger and a curious, morbid fascination. One particularly tense evening, after a heated exchange about paint colors, Jessica found herself staring into the mirror. Her reflection looked back, her eyes narrowed, a line of frustration etched between her brows. But then, as she watched, her reflection's expression subtly shifted. The frustration in the reflected face morphed into something colder, almost a sneer, a flicker of something predatory in the eyes. Jessica gasped, stepping back abruptly. Her own face, she realized, hadn't moved. The reflection had changed on its own. She ran to Michael in the living room, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "Michael, you have to see this. The mirror, it looked at me differently. It wasn't me." Michael, still fuming from their earlier argument, rolled his eyes. "Jessica, it's an old mirror. It's probably just the light, or you're tired. We're both stressed." He didn't even look up from his phone. The dismissal stung, but it was the look in his eyes that truly unnerved her. They were cold, distant, almost devoid of the warmth she knew so well. It was a look she'd only ever seen in her reflection, just moments ago. A chilling thought, a terrifying whisper began to echo in the corners of her mind. What if it wasn't just a reflection anymore? What if the mirror wasn't just showing them what was there, but showing them something else entirely? And what if, just what if, it was starting to show them pieces of themselves they never wanted to see? The mirror, hanging silently in the entryway, seemed to hum with a low, almost imperceptible energy, and they unknowingly had just scratched the surface of the terrifying truth it held. The morning after, a strange, almost tangible quiet hung over the shared house. Sunlight, usually a cheerful presence, seemed muted, struggling to break through the thick antique glass of the entryway mirror. Jessica was the first one down, drawn by an inexplicable pull, or perhaps just the need for coffee. As she passed the mirror, she caught her reflection. For a split second, her own eyes, usually a warm hazel, seemed to possess a chilling, vacant stare, and a faint, almost imperceptible smirk twisted her lips. It was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by her normal, slightly tired morning face. She blinked, shaking her head. Too much work, not enough sleep, she told herself, dismissing the unsettling image as a trick of the light or her own exhaustion. Michael, usually the pragmatic one, found himself lingering in the entryway a little longer than necessary when he went to grab his mail. He glanced at the mirror, a heavy, ornate piece, feeling a flicker of the unease from the previous night. He saw his own reflection, solid and unremarkable. He ran a hand over his chin, a habit, and for a fleeting instant, the reflection's hand seemed to hesitate, almost recoil, before mimicking his movement. He frowned, chalking it up to the old glass having some subtle distortion. He wasn't one for superstitions, and he certainly wasn't going to start now over an old piece of furniture, no matter how imposing. But the seed of doubt had been planted, not just in their individual minds, but subtly, almost imperceptibly, within the collective atmosphere of the house. David, ever the instigator, was next. He sauntered into the entryway, a mischievous glint in his eye. "All right, everyone's been tiptoeing around this thing like it's cursed," he announced, gesturing dramatically at the mirror. "Who's brave enough for a real look?" Emily, who had been engrossed in a book in the living room, peered over the top of her glasses. "David, it's just an old mirror. Probably worth a fortune, but nothing more." Her tone was dismissive, but her gaze lingered on the mirror for a fraction of a second longer than strictly necessary. She was a scholar, a researcher, and while she scoffed at the supernatural, her mind was always open to anomalies, to anything that defied immediate explanation. "Oh, is it?" David challenged, stepping directly in front of the mirror. He grinned at his reflection, flexing an arm playfully. "Look at that, handsome as ever. No demons here, folks, just good old David." But as he held his pose, his reflection seemed to hold it a fraction of a second longer than he did, its smile broadening into something subtly grotesque, its eyes darkening with an intensity that wasn't his own. David blinked and it was gone. He chuckled a little too loudly. "Whoa, that glass really plays tricks. Made me look like I'd just seen a ghost." He tried to laugh it off, but a faint tremor ran through him. Jessica, pouring herself another cup of coffee, watched him from the kitchen doorway. "I saw something similar earlier," she admitted, her voice low. "My reflection." It looked incredibly sad, almost menacing for a second. Michael, who had been trying to ignore the conversation, turned from the mail table. "It's old glass. Imperfections, light refraction. Nothing to worry about." He said it with a conviction that he didn't entirely feel. He remembered the hesitation of his reflection's hand. It was such a small thing, but it had stuck with him. Emily, however, was intrigued. Her analytical mind was now engaged. "Interesting," she murmured, rising from her chair and approaching the mirror cautiously. She didn't look at her reflection immediately. Instead, she ran a gloved finger lightly over the ornate frame, examining the intricate carvings, the aged wood. "This isn't just old. It's exceptionally old. The craftsmanship is unlike anything I've seen from typical American antique dealers. It has a very specific European Gothic feel, but even then it's unusual." She leaned closer to the glass, not to see herself, but to observe the material itself. The silvering on the back, it's almost perfectly preserved, yet the glass itself seems to have a peculiar quality. It almost seems to absorb the light, rather than just reflect it. As she spoke, Michael, still trying to prove his point, stepped in front of the mirror again. "See? Nothing. Just me. Nothing out of the ordinary." He stared hard at his reflection, willing it to be normal, to be just a reflection. But this time it was different. His reflection's eyes, usually clear and direct, seemed to hold a flicker of deep-seated resentment, a weariness he recognized but rarely allowed himself to acknowledge. And then the reflection's lips, his own lips, twisted into a sneer, a look of profound contempt directed not at him, but at an unseen point just over his shoulder. It was a look he had seen before on his own face, in moments of extreme frustration or anger, but never so raw, so unbridled. He flinched, stepping back abruptly. "What was that?" Jessica asked, her voice hushed. Michael shook his head, running a hand through his hair. I don't know. My reflection, it looked angry. Really angry. And it was looking past me like it's someone else." He swallowed hard, the rational explanation suddenly feeling very thin. David, who had been watching Michael intently, felt a shiver run down his spine. "Okay, that's actually pretty creepy." His earlier bravado had vanished, replaced by a genuine unease. Emily, finally looking into the mirror, didn't see an angry reflection or a sad one. She saw herself, calm and composed, but behind her in the reflection, the living room where Michael and Jessica stood seemed to warp and twist. The familiar furniture elongated, the walls bowed, and the light grew dim, as if a storm were brewing inside the reflected room. She blinked, and the distortion vanished, leaving the living room in the reflection exactly as it was behind her. Her breath caught in her throat. Her scientific mind struggled to reconcile what she had just witnessed with any known optical phenomenon. "Did you all see that?" Emily asked, her voice barely a whisper. The room, it distorted. It looked like the house was collapsing in the reflection. Jessica and Michael exchanged nervous glances. David squinted at the mirror, then at the actual living room. "I didn't see anything that time, Emily," David said, his voice now entirely stripped of its usual confidence. "Just you looking a little freaked out." "I saw it," Emily insisted, her eyes wide. "It was there for a second, clear as day." A heavy silence descended upon them, broken only by the distant hum of the refrigerator. The mirror, hanging in the entryway, no longer seemed like a mere antique. It felt like an entity, a silent observer, subtly twisting their perceptions, playing on their individual fears. Michael, the pragmatist, felt a gnawing anxiety in his stomach. Jessica, the sensitive one, felt a cold dread creeping into her bones. David, the adventurous one, felt a prickle of genuine fear he hadn't experienced since childhood. And Emily, the intellectual, felt the unsettling thrill of an enigma, a puzzle that defied all logic, but also a growing sense of vulnerability. They started to talk, to share their experiences, each recounting their brief, unsettling encounters. The fleeting sadness, the hesitant hand, the grotesque grin, the raw anger, the warping room. Individually, they could be dismissed. Collectively, they formed a disturbing pattern. The mirror wasn't just reflecting light. It was reflecting something else, something deeper, something linked to them, to their unspoken anxieties, their hidden selves. As they discussed, their voices grew hushed, their eyes darting nervously between each other and the dark, reflective surface. A subtle tension began to build between them. Emily, ever the researcher, started to suggest looking for information about the mirror, perhaps its origin or similar artifacts. Michael, still trying to find a logical explanation, proposed they cover it just to see if the effects stopped. Jessica, however, felt an inexplicable urge to keep looking, to understand what it was trying to show them. David, despite his fear, was also captivated, a dangerous curiosity overriding his instinct to flee. That evening, the atmosphere in the house was thick with unspoken apprehension. Jessica, unable to shake the feeling of unease, found herself back in the entryway, drawn to the mirror like a moth to a flame. She stared at her reflection, willing it to be normal to prove Michael right. But as she looked, her reflection didn't just twist or sneer. Her reflected self began to weep, silently at first, then racking sobs that shook her reflected body, though no sound escaped the glass. And as her reflection wept, its eyes, her own eyes, glowed with a faint malevolent red, not of sadness, but of pure, unadulterated hatred. It was a hatred so profound, so alien, that it chilled Jessica to the bone, making her question not just what she was seeing, but who she truly was, or what dark potential lay dormant within her. She stumbled back, a choked gasp escaping her lips. The horrifying image burned into her mind. The mirror, in its silent, ominous way, was just getting started. Jessica's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the sudden, suffocating silence of her apartment. She stumbled backward again, tripping over her own feet, collapsing onto the cold hardwood floor. Her breath hitched ragged and shallow as she stared at the ornate frame of the mirror, now reflecting only the mundane, empty hallway. The monstrous image, the twisted smile, the eyes that weren't hers but felt intimately connected to some buried part of herself, had vanished as quickly as it appeared. Her mind, usually so sharp and logical, scrambled for an explanation. It had to be a trick of the light, a hallucination brought on by stress and lack of sleep. Her imagination, running wild after too many late-night thrillers. She squeezed her eyes shut, pressing the heels of her palms against them until kaleidoscopic patterns danced behind her eyelids. When she opened them again, the mirror was still there, an innocent antique piece of furniture, reflecting the soft glow of the table lamp from the living room. But the fear, cold and visceral, lingered. It coiled deep in her gut, a knot of dread that refused to unravel. She dragged herself to her feet, her legs feeling like lead. She couldn't bring herself to look into the mirror again. Not yet. Maybe not ever. She backed away slowly, never turning her back completely on the polished surface, until she reached the living room. She collapsed onto the sofa, pulling her knees to her chest, burying her face in them. The image was seared into her memory, a terrifying phantom limb of her own identity. For the rest of the night, sleep was an impossible luxury. Every shadow seemed to lengthen. Every creak of the old building sounded like footsteps. She kept her eyes fixed on the hallway, half expecting the distorted reflection to reappear, to beckon her, to consume her. By dawn, exhaustion had painted dark circles under her eyes, and her nerves were frayed threads. She avoided the hallway, making a wide detour through the kitchen to get to her bedroom, where she dressed quickly, her movements jerky and anxious. The mirror felt like a predator, silently waiting. Days bled into a week, and Jessica's avoidance became a ritual. She stopped using the hallway bathroom, opting for the smaller, less convenient one in her bedroom, which thankfully contained no such ominous-looking glass. She even started leaving the apartment earlier, staying out later, anything to minimize her time in the space that now felt tainted, watched. She tried to convince herself it was fading, that the memory of the grotesque reflection was just that, a memory, a bad dream. But every time she caught her own reflection in a shop window or a polished surface, a flicker of that other face, that other potential, seemed to mock her from the periphery of her vision. The subtlety of the change was what truly unnerved her. It wasn't just the memory. It was a shift within her. Little things. A sudden, inexplicable surge of irritation at a slow driver, far more intense than her usual mild annoyance. A cutting remark she almost made to a colleague. A thought that felt sharp and cruel, utterly unlike her usual empathetic nature. She'd catch herself, horrified, wondering where these dark impulses were coming from. Was she just stressed? Or was it it? One evening her friend Emily called. "Hey stranger, you've been MIA. Everything okay? You sound a little off." Jessica hesitated. How could she explain? "Yeah, no, I'm fine, Emily. Just a lot going on at work." Even as she said it, the lie felt thin, transparent. Emily, with her cheerful practicality, would never understand. She'd suggest therapy or a vacation or a good night's sleep. She wouldn't believe in a mirror that showed you your own damnation. "Well, you need a break." Emily insisted. "Come over for dinner tomorrow night? I'm making your favorite lasagna." Jessica almost said no. The thought of leaving her apartment, of facing the world when she felt so intrinsically fractured, was daunting. But the idea of spending another night alone in her apartment, constantly aware of the mirror's silent presence, was even worse. "Yeah, okay, that sounds nice. What time?" The next evening, as Jessica prepared to leave, she found herself inexplicably drawn to the hallway. Her heart pounded a familiar, sickening rhythm. It was a compulsion, a magnetic pull she couldn't resist. She walked slowly, hesitantly towards the mirror. Her reflection stared back, pale and drawn but otherwise normal. She leaned in closer, studying her eyes, searching for any hint of the malevolence she'd witnessed. Nothing. Just her own tired, anxious gaze. A sigh of relief escaped her lips, a fragile bubble of hope. Maybe it was just stress. Maybe she was overreacting. But as she turned to grab her keys from the small table by the door, a faint flicker caught her eye. In the mirror's reflection, the door behind her seemed to warp, the wood swirling into a dark, indistinct pattern for a fleeting second. She spun around, but the door was solid, normal. She looked back at the mirror. It was still showing her the normal hallway, the normal door. Her breath hitched. She blinked rapidly, trying to clear her vision, to dismiss the image as a trick of her exhausted mind. But the sense of unease returned, heavier than before. It wasn't just her reflection anymore. It was her perception that was being twisted. She practically fled the apartment, slamming the door shut with a force that rattled the frame. Emily's apartment was a welcome sanctuary of warmth and normalcy. The aroma of baking lasagna filled the air, and Emily greeted her with a hug. "There she is. You look like you've seen a ghost, Jess. Are you sure you're okay?" Jessica forced a smile. "Just a rough week, Em." "Really?" She sat at the kitchen island, trying to focus on Emily's cheerful chatter about her new work project. But her mind kept drifting back to the mirror, to the warping door, to the dark thoughts that had plagued her. As Emily turned to pull the lasagna from the oven, Jessica's gaze drifted to a small, framed photo on the counter. A picture of Emily and her boyfriend David on a hiking trip. They looked so happy, so genuinely in love. A pang of something sharp, something almost like resentment pierced Jessica. Why did Emily get to have that? Why did she get to be so effortlessly happy when Jessica felt like she was unraveling? The thought was jarring, ugly, and it wasn't hers. It felt alien, yet it had formed in her mind. She recoiled inwardly, shaking her head slightly, trying to dislodge the toxic thought. "Everything all right over there?" Emily asked, noticing her friend's distant expression. "Yeah, just admiring the photo," Jessica lied, her voice a little too strained. "You guys look great." Later, as they ate, Jessica found herself strangely irritable. Emily was talking about a minor disagreement she'd had with David, a silly argument over dinner plans. Normally, Jessica would offer empathetic advice, listen patiently. But tonight, a cynical voice in her head whispered, "He probably doesn't even care. He's just placating you." She found herself struggling to keep a neutral expression, the urge to say something dismissive, something mean bubbling just beneath the surface. She clamped her jaw shut, digging her nails into her palm, fighting against the intrusive thoughts. Emily, sensing her friend's unusual quietness and the tension in her posture, finally put down her fork. "Seriously, Jess, what's going on? You're not yourself. You're jumpy, you're quiet, and you look like you haven't slept in days. Is it work? A guy? You can tell me anything." Jessica looked at her friend, at the genuine concern in Emily's eyes. A wave of guilt washed over her, chilling her to the bone. She was losing herself. This wasn't her. This wasn't the friend Emily knew. The mirror wasn't just showing her a reflection. It was twisting her reality, infecting her thoughts, turning her into something she didn't recognize. It's complicated, Em," Jessica began, her voice barely a whisper. She considered truly telling her everything, but the words felt impossible, too insane to articulate. How could she explain a mirror that showed her a monster, that whispered dark thoughts into her mind, that warped her very perception of reality? Emily would think she was breaking down. She was breaking down. I think there's something wrong with my apartment," Jessica finally managed, choosing a less terrifying, more plausible half-truth. "I've been hearing things, seeing things. I think maybe it's just getting to me." Emily frowned, her brow furrowed with concern. Seeing things? Like what? A leak? A mouse? Jessica shook her head, a tremor running through her. No. Worse. I think it's haunted. The word felt ridiculous, childish, but it was the closest she could come to describing the pervasive sense of dread and malevolence that now permeated her life. And there's this old mirror. I think it's the source. Emily's expression softened, a hint of pity entering her eyes. Jess, honey, you're exhausted. You're probably just imagining things. Old buildings creak, shadows play tricks. Why don't you stay here tonight? Get some proper sleep. We can go check out your apartment tomorrow. Maybe call a handyman to look for drafts or structural issues. Jessica almost cried with relief at the offer, but also with a crushing sense of despair. Emily didn't believe her. She thought Jessica was delusional. But what if Emily was right? What if it was all in her head? Or what if it wasn't, and Jessica was dragging her best friend into something far more sinister than a creaky floorboard? As Emily cleared the table, Jessica's gaze fell on a small, decorative mirror hanging on Emily's living room wall. It was a simple modern piece, but for a split second, as Emily bent over to pick up a dropped napkin, Jessica saw it. Not Emily's reflection, but a fleeting shadowy figure behind her. Quick as a blink, a dark, gaunt form with unnaturally long skeletal fingers reaching out, almost touching Emily's shoulder. Jessica gasped, her eyes widening in horror. She blinked, and the reflection was normal again. Emily was just bending down, her back to the mirror. Nothing was there. Jessica's blood ran cold. It wasn't confined to her apartment. It wasn't just her mirror. The darkness was spreading. It was following her. And now it was showing her things in other mirrors, hinting at dangers beyond her own twisted reflection, suggesting that the malevolent entity was not only influencing her mind, but was now reaching out, closer to the people she cared about, perhaps even to Emily herself. A profound, bone-chilling realization dawned on her. The mirror wasn't just showing her what lay within her. It was showing her what it intended to do to her world. Jessica stumbled back from the antique glass, her breath catching in her throat, a cold metallic taste coating her tongue. The images it had shown her, the distorted reflections of Michael, of Emily, weren't just warnings. They were blueprints. The mirror wasn't a passive observer of her fears. It was an active architect of her destruction, using the very people she loved as its tools. A scream clawed its way up her throat, but she bit it back, her jaw aching. Screaming wouldn't help. It would only confirm the horror. Her first instinct was primal. Destroy it. Shatter the cursed thing into a million pieces. She snatched a heavy bronze statue from the mantelpiece, its cold weight reassuring in her trembling hand. She raised it, her arm shaking with a mixture of terror and white-hot rage, aiming for the center of the mirror's ornate frame. But as she brought it down, a sudden blinding flash of light erupted from the glass, so intense it forced her to recoil, shielding her eyes. A high-pitched, almost imperceptible hum vibrated through the air, chilling her to the bone. When she dared to look again, the mirror was unchanged, its surface calm, reflecting only her own terrified face. The bronze statue still clutched uselessly in her hand. It was as if the mirror had simply shrugged off her attempt, a silent, mocking display of its invincibility. A profound sense of helplessness washed over her. She couldn't destroy it. Could she cover it? She grabbed a thick velvet curtain from a nearby window, tearing it from its rod in her haste. With trembling hands, she flung it over the mirror, attempting to smother its evil gaze. For a moment, a sliver of relief. The dark fabric hung heavy, obscuring the reflective surface. But then, a subtle ripple ran through the velvet, as if an unseen hand was pushing against it from behind. The fabric began to glow, faintly at first, then brighter, a pulsating, sickly green light emanating from beneath the heavy material. The hum returned, louder this time, a low thrum that vibrated through the floorboards, through her very bones. The curtain, as if consumed by an internal fire, began to smolder, a thin wisp of smoke curling upwards, carrying the acrid scent of burning fabric. Jessica ripped it away, dropping the singed velvet to the floor, where it continued to glow for a few sickening seconds before fading. The mirror once again was pristine, its surface glinting innocently. It wasn't just a mirror. It was alive, and it was playing with her. Panic morphed into a cold, desperate resolve. She couldn't destroy it, couldn't cover it, but she had to understand it. She had to fight it. Her mind raced, sifting through every detail she knew about the antique. It had been an unexpected gift from a distant relative, a great-aunt she'd barely known, found tucked away in the dusty attic of her newly inherited old house. The accompanying note had been brief, almost dismissive. "Found this old thing. Thought you might like it for your new place. Adds character." Character. A shiver ran down her spine. She tried to recall anything, any old wives' tales, any local legends about the house or the mirror itself. Nothing concrete came to mind. The house was old, yes, but not notoriously haunted. Just a charming, slightly creaky Victorian. Until now. Her phone buzzed, a text from Michael. "Hey, still on for dinner? I'm starving. Text me when you're ready." Dinner. Michael. The mirror had shown her a distorted version of him, a puppet on its strings. A wave of nausea hit her. How could she face him, knowing what the mirror intended? Could it already be influencing him? Was that what the mirror wanted her to think, to isolate her? She forced her fingers to type a reply. Running a little late. Be there soon. She needed to act normal. She needed to observe. Leaving the mirror exposed felt like leaving a predator unattended, but she couldn't take her eyes off it. She backed away slowly, never turning her back, until she was out of the living room, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She hurried to her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Antique mirrors, strange occurrences, paranormal activity, cursed objects. She typed every combination she could think of. The internet was a vast ocean of information, but also of misinformation. Most results were sensationalized clickbait or vague forums. Then, a flicker of something. An obscure article on a local historical society's website, detailing strange artifacts found in the region. One entry, buried deep, mentioned a looking glass from the late 19th century, rumored to have belonged to a reclusive family known for their eccentricities. The article was sparse on details, only hinting at unnatural reflections and a peculiar malevolence that clung to its surface. It mentioned that the mirror had been lost or stolen decades ago, after an unexplained fire at the family's estate. The name of the family was Blackwood. Blackwood. Jessica felt a cold dread settle in her stomach. Her great-aunt's maiden name was Blackwood. The mirror had come from that side of the family, a direct lineage. It wasn't just an old mirror, it was that old mirror. The article didn't offer solutions, only confirmed her worst fears. This wasn't some trick of the light or an overactive imagination. This was real, and it had a history of malevolence. She felt a sudden irrational urge to check on Emily. Emily was staying with her best friend Sarah for a sleepover that felt suddenly very far away, very unprotected. Jessica tried to rationalize it. Emily was safe with Sarah's parents, but the images in the mirror, Emily's innocent face twisting into something monstrous, replayed in her mind. She called Sarah's mom Brenda. "Hey Brenda, sorry to bother you, but how's Emily doing? Just checking in." Brenda's voice was cheerful. "Oh, she's great, Jessica. They're having a blast. Just finished a movie. Now they're giggling about something upstairs. Everything's fine. She's not acting strange at all?" Jessica pressed, her voice tighter than she intended. Brenda paused. "Strange? No, not at all. Perfectly normal 10-year-old behavior. Why? Is everything okay with you?" Jessica forced a laugh. Yeah, just being an overprotective mom, you know how it is. Thanks, Brenda. I'll pick her up tomorrow." She hung up, her hand shaking. Brenda hadn't noticed anything. Or perhaps, the mirror's influence was too subtle to be detected by an outsider. Or perhaps it hadn't started yet. Not truly. As she paced her study, her gaze kept darting towards the living room doorway, as if expecting the mirror to somehow move, to follow her. The silence in the house felt heavy, pregnant with unseen malice. She knew she couldn't stay in the house with it. She had to get it out. But how? It had resisted destruction. It had resisted being covered. Could she simply move it? Carry it outside? Throw it in a dumpster? The thought was absurdly simple, almost comical, given the terror it had inflicted. But what if that was the solution? If it couldn't affect her from afar, if it needed to be looked into? Summoning every ounce of courage, Jessica walked back into the living room. The mirror stood there, innocent and ornate, reflecting the afternoon light. It seemed to mock her, daring her to try. She wrapped her hands around its heavy wooden frame. her skin crawling as she touched the cold, polished surface. It was heavier than it looked, solid and unyielding. She strained trying to lift it, to drag it. It didn't budge. Not an inch. It felt rooted to the floor, as if it had become part of the very structure of the house. No matter how hard she pulled, how much she strained, the mirror remained fixed. It was immovable. A guttural growl escaped her lips, a sound of pure frustration and despair. It was trapped here, and so was she. Defeated, she sank to the floor, her back against the wall, staring at the impassive surface. Was it watching her? Was it enjoying her torment? She felt a profound sense of violation, of being utterly exposed. Then a faint shimmer on the mirror's surface. Not a reflection of her, but something within the glass itself. A fleeting image, like a ghost passing through fog. A tiny, almost imperceptible crack, spiderwebbing through the glass from the bottom left corner, growing slowly, almost imperceptibly as she watched. It wasn't a physical crack. It was an internal fracture, a dark vein spreading through the reflective layer. And within that spreading darkness, she saw something move, flicker, a shadow, and then for a split second a pair of eyes. Not human eyes. Something ancient, cold, and utterly devoid of empathy. They seemed to stare directly at her, through the glass, through her very soul. The sound of Michael's car pulling into the driveway shattered the horrifying tableau. He was here, and she had no idea how to protect him from the monster she had brought into their lives. The mirror had shown her what it intended to do. Now she realized it was beginning to show her how. It was breaking, or rather it was opening, and whatever was behind those eyes, whatever was trapped within that cursed glass, was about to be unleashed. The air in the room didn't just chill. It solidified, pressing against Jessica's lungs like a lead weight. The mirror, once a flat surface, now seemed to ripple, its silver depth churning like disturbed water. The cracks, the ones that had been spiderwebbing across its surface, glowed with a faint, sickly green light, pulsing in an unnatural rhythm. It wasn't just breaking. It was actively dissolving its own barriers, tearing itself open from the inside. Jessica stumbled backward, her hand flying to her mouth to stifle a scream that threatened to tear her throat. The reflection of her own terrified face in the mirror didn't mimic her movement. Instead, it stayed fixed, eyes wide, a silent, horrified witness to the unfolding impossibility. Then her reflection's eyes, her eyes began to well with blackness, not tears, but an oily, viscous void that seeped from the pupils, spreading across the whites, consuming them. The reflection's mouth opened, not in a scream, but in a silent, stretched an abyss. A sound like dry leaves skittering across a vast, empty plain began to emanate from the mirror. It was a whisper, but it wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from within her head, insidious and cold. It spoke no words, only a cacophony of lost, echoing pleas and fragmented, guttural moans, a chorus of suffering that clawed at the edges of her sanity. The room tilted. The walls seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting with each surge of the mirror's unholy glow. Jessica squeezed her eyes shut, trying to block out the sight, the sound, the impossible sensation of plummeting into an unseen abyss. She stumbled again, her knees buckling, and she crashed to the floor, her hands scrambling for purchase on the cold, wooden planks. She wanted to run, to flee this house, this city, this entire reality, but her limbs felt heavy, tethered to the spot by an invisible, oppressive force. When she dared to open her eyes, the glowing cracks were gone. The rippling surface had settled. The reflection of her own face was back to normal, albeit still pale and terrified. But something was different. The air was still thick with an unspoken presence, a cold, heavy silence that vibrated with malevolence. And in the very center of the mirror, where the deepest crack had been, a tiny, almost imperceptible shimmer remained, like heat haze rising from asphalt, distorting the world just slightly beyond the glass. It was a wound, a portal, a tear in the fabric of what was real. She scrambled to her feet, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She needed to get away. She needed to get out. Spinning on her heel, she bolted from the bedroom, not even bothering to close the door behind her. Down the hall she ran, her bare feet slapping against the wood, her breath ragged and loud in the sudden, unnerving quiet of the house. The oppressive cold followed her, a phantom chill clinging to her skin. In the living room, the familiar furniture seemed alien, draped in shadows that deepened and shifted with a life of their own. The usually comforting glow of the streetlights filtering through the windows now cast long, distorted figures across the floor, mimicking grotesque, reaching hands. She fumbled for her phone on the coffee table, her fingers numb and clumsy. She needed to call Michael. She needed to hear a normal voice, a voice that could ground her, that could tell her this was all a nightmare, a hallucination brought on by stress and lack of sleep. She dialed his number, her ear pressed so tightly to the receiver she could feel the plastic dig into her skin. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Each ring was an eternity, a hollow echo in the vast silence that had descended upon her home. On the 4th ring, his voice, groggy with sleep, finally answered. "Jess? What's wrong? What time is it?" Michael's voice was a lifeline, but even as she heard it, a new layer of dread settled over her. How could she explain this? How could she make him understand the impossible horror she had just witnessed? "Michael," she choked out, her voice a thin, reedy whisper. It's the mirror. Something happened. It opened." There was a pause on the other end, a beat of silence that felt heavier than any sound. Then Michael's voice, softer now, laced with concern. "Open, Jess? What do you mean? Are you okay? Are you feeling all right?" His question, innocent as it was a punch to her gut. He thought she was losing her mind. She could hear it in his tone, the gentle worry that bordered on pity. "No, Michael, I'm not. I'm not imagining things. It was real. The cracks, they glowed. And there was this sound, this horrible sound, and then it was like something came out of it. I can feel it, Michael. It's here." She clutched the phone tighter, her eyes darting around the living room. A faint scraping sound came from the kitchen, like something dragging across the tile. Her breath hitched. "Jess, please calm down," Michael said, his voice firmer now, trying to take control. "You've been under a lot of stress with work and, well, with all this mirror stuff. Maybe you should just try to get some sleep. I'll come over first thing in the morning, okay? We can talk about it then. We can even get rid of that old thing, if it's bothering you this much." Get rid of it? The thought was absurd. It wasn't just a mirror anymore. It was a gateway. And whatever had passed through it, whatever had been unleashed, was no longer confined. The scraping sound intensified, followed by a soft thud. It was definitely coming from the kitchen. "No, Michael, you don't understand," she pleaded, her voice rising in panic. "It's not just bothering me. It's here. I hear things. I feel things. Please just believe me." Another silence. This one was longer, laden with unspoken doubt. "Jess, I'm worried about you. Are you sure you're alone?" "Yes," she hissed, her voice cracking. "Of course I'm alone. That's the problem." A sudden sharp clang echoed from the kitchen, like a pot falling to the floor. Jessica screamed, a raw, involuntary sound that tore from her lungs. "Jess, what was that?" Michael's voice was sharp with alarm now, the sleepiness gone. "I don't know," she cried, tears streaming down her face. "Something's in the kitchen. I heard it. Michael, please just come over. Now." Okay, I'm coming," he said, his voice urgent. "I'm leaving right now. Just stay on the phone with me, okay? Don't hang up. Go lock yourself in the bathroom or your bedroom. Anywhere safe. Just stay on the line." Jessica gripped the phone, her knuckles white. She couldn't move. Her feet felt rooted to the floor, her eyes glued to the dark archway leading to the kitchen. The scraping sound started again, closer this time, accompanied by a faint, rhythmic drip, drip, drip. It sounded like water, or something thicker, hitting the tile. "Michael, I can't," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I can't move. It's like it wants me to stay." She heard Michael fumbling, probably getting dressed, grabbing his keys. "Jess, you have to move. Get somewhere safe. I'm 5 minutes away, maybe 10. Just hold on." The air around her grew colder, a bone-deep chill that seeped into her very marrow. A shadow detached itself from the wall beside the kitchen archway, not a natural shadow, but a deeper, inkier darkness that seemed to coil and writhe, stretching towards her. It wasn't just the absence of light. It was a presence, a malevolent void that pulsed with ancient hunger. The whispers returned, not in her head this time, but from all around her, a chorus of barely discernible voices, like 100 starving mouths trying to speak at once. They were closer now, pressing in, encircling her. She could almost feel their cold breath on her skin. "Jessica." A single clear voice detached itself from the cacophony. It was a voice like broken glass, dry and raspy, yet undeniably her own. It wasn't her reflection speaking. It was her own voice distorted, twisted into something monstrous. It was coming from the shadows, from the very air itself. She gasped, dropping the phone. It clattered to the floor, Michael's frantic shouts echoing from its speaker. The shadow surged forward, coalescing, not into a shape, but into an absence, a gaping hole in reality that radiated pure, unadulterated terror. It was the entity. It was what had been trapped. It was what had been unleashed. And it was no longer behind the glass. It was standing before her, a swirling vortex of darkness, whispering her name with her own voice. And in that moment, Jessica knew with a certainty that chilled her to her soul, that the mirror had not just opened. It had invited something in. And now that something had found its way out, it had found its way to her. The very air crackled with malevolent energy, and the faint shimmering wound in the mirror, visible even from the living room, seemed to pulse with a dark, triumphant light. The game, she realized, had only just begun. The game, she realized, had only just begun. A cold dread, far deeper than any she'd ever known, seized Jessica. It wasn't just a haunted object, it was a predator, and she was its chosen prey. The pulsating light from the mirror's wound seemed to mock her, a silent, triumphant laugh echoing in the sudden, profound silence of the house. Every shadow deepened, every familiar creak of the old floorboards now sounded like a deliberate step, a malicious approach. She backed away slowly, her eyes locked on the mirror, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. The air around it felt heavy, viscous, as if it were a physical barrier thrumming with unseen power. She stumbled, catching herself on the armrest of the sofa, and then scrambled to her feet, her mind racing. What had it done to David? What had it done to Emily? And Michael, where was he? Panic threatened to overwhelm her, but a flicker of defiance sparked within her. She wouldn't just stand by and let this thing consume everything she cared about. She wouldn't be another victim in its twisted game. She had to understand it, had to find a way to fight back. Her first instinct was to call Michael. Her fingers fumbled for her phone, but as she raised it, a chill ran down her spine. The screen was dark. Not just off, but utterly dead. She pressed the power button repeatedly, but nothing. It was as if the device itself had been drained of all life. She tried the house phone, then Michael's cell again, then Emily's. All dead. The internet was down. The power, however, remained on, casting an unsettling glow through the house. It was a deliberate, targeted isolation. The mirror wanted her alone. She forced herself to breathe, to think. She remembered the strange antique shop, the old man who sold it to them. He had been unusually eager to part with it, almost relieved. Had he known? Had he seen this coming? Jessica moved through the silent house, each step deliberate, her senses on high alert. The living room, which usually felt like a sanctuary, now felt like a cage. She couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, not just by the mirror, but by something unseen, something lurking just beyond the periphery of her vision. She made her way to the kitchen, grabbing a heavy cast iron pan, its weight a small comfort in her trembling hand. It was illogical, she knew, a mere pan against an unseen entity, but it was something. She remembered the old folk tales her grandmother used to tell, stories of malevolent spirits and ancient curses. They always had a weakness, a specific ritual, a forgotten word. This wasn't a ghost story, though. This felt like something far older, far more insidious. As she passed the hallway mirror, not the cursed one, but a simple decorative piece, she caught a glimpse of her own reflection. But it wasn't quite right. Her eyes, usually a warm hazel, seemed to glow with a faint, unsettling crimson. Her lips were twisted into a subtle, almost imperceptible smirk that wasn't hers. It was there for only a split second, a horrifying distortion, before her reflection snapped back to normal. She stared, her blood running cold. It was playing with her, showing her what it could do, what it might eventually make her into. She had to find information. The internet was out, but she had books. Old books. She remembered a dusty section in their home library that Michael had inherited from his eccentric great-aunt, filled with forgotten tomes on folklore, local history, and the occult. Michael had always joked about them, calling them his doomsday prep for a supernatural apocalypse. Now they were her only hope. She raced upstairs, her heart still pounding, the heavy pan clutched in her hand. The library was at the back of the house, a room usually filled with the comforting scent of old paper and leather. Tonight it felt eerily oppressive. She scanned the shelves, her eyes darting across titles, searching for anything that might pertain to mirrors, ancient curses, or malevolent entities. Her fingers brushed against a thin, leather-bound volume tucked away behind a row of thicker books. Its title was embossed in faded gold: Reflections of the Abyss, a compendium of unseen portals. Her breath hitched. This had to be it. She pulled the book out, dust motes dancing in the faint light. It felt ancient, its pages brittle. She carried it to the small reading table in the center of the room, switching on the desk lamp. The light seemed weak, struggling against the encroaching darkness that filled the corners of the room. She began to flip through the pages, her eyes scanning for keywords: mirror, portal, reflection, entity, curse. The language was archaic, dense, filled with cryptic warnings and fragmented descriptions of various otherworldly phenomena. Most of it was gibberish, but then she found a section titled, The Glimmering Veil. A warning. She began to read, her voice a low whisper in the otherwise silent house. And beware the glimmering veil, for it is not a mere reflection, but a window to realms unseen, a prison for that which should not be. Fashioned in ages past by those who sought to contain the unbound, it is a fragile barrier. Should it be wounded, should its integrity be compromised by the gaze of the unwary, or the foolish touch of mortal hands, the prison weakens. The entity within, starved for myriad centuries, will stir. It will seek egress, and its hunger will be insatiable. It will consume light, warmth, and life, drawing them through the wound, until the barrier shatters entirely, and it steps forth into our world. Jessica's blood ran cold. The wound, the shimmering crack in their mirror. It wasn't just a defect, it was a breach. The mirror wasn't just cursed, it was a prison, and something was trying to escape. She continued to read, her fingers trembling as she turned the fragile pages. The text described how the entity, once roused, would begin to siphon energy, starting subtly, then escalating. It would project illusions, twist perceptions, and feed on fear, growing stronger with each passing moment of dread it instilled. It would seek to isolate its chosen target, severing their ties to the outside world, making them vulnerable. And then the chilling revelation. Should the veil weaken sufficiently, the entity will seek a vessel, a host, one whose spirit is strong, yet whose mind has been touched by the veil's influence. It will whisper, it will tempt, it will offer power or solace, until the host's will is broken, and the vessel is taken. Jessica dropped the book. It landed on the table with a soft thud, the ancient pages rustling. A vessel, a host. It had chosen her. The crimson glow in her reflection, the isolation, the escalating fear. It was all part of its insidious plan. It wasn't just trying to scare her. It was trying to possess her. She looked up, her gaze instinctively drawn to the door of the library. But it wasn't the door she saw. In the polished, dark wood of the door, she saw a faint, distorted reflection, not of the room but of a vast, swirling darkness, a maelstrom of shadow and malice. And in the center of that darkness, two pinpricks of malevolent light, like eyes, focused directly on her. A whisper, barely audible, slithered into her mind, not through her ears, but directly into the core of her being. It was a voice that promised power, an end to fear, a release from all suffering. It was the voice of the entity, insidious and alluring, trying to break her. The air in the library grew impossibly cold, and a faint, sickly sweet scent, like decaying flowers, filled her nostrils. The desk lamp flickered, then died, plunging the room into near darkness, illuminated only by the faint, distant glow from the living room, the pulsating light from the mirror's wound. She closed her eyes, trying to block out the whispers, the darkness, the terrifying realization of what was truly happening. But when she opened them again, the reflection in the door was gone. Instead, standing silently in the doorway, silhouetted against the distant light, was a figure. It was Michael, but his posture was stiff, unnatural. His head was slightly tilted, and his eyes, even from this distance, seemed devoid of their usual warmth. A slow, unnerving smile spread across his face, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. It was cold, predatory, and utterly devoid of humanity. "Jessica," he whispered, his voice a distorted echo of Michael's, "the game is almost over, and you're losing." The mirror had found its way to her, but it had also found its way to him, and now it was using him to come for her. The prison was weakening. The entity was almost free. And Michael, her Michael, was just the first piece it was using in its final terrifying move. The realization hit Jessica like a physical blow, stealing the air from her lungs. Michael, Her Michael. He wasn't just sick, wasn't just hallucinating. He was compromised. The entity, whatever it was, had found its way into him, twisting him, using him as a puppet. The love of her life, now a terrifying conduit for something unspeakable. She stared at him, truly stared, and the subtle shifts in his eyes, the way his lips curved in a smile that wasn't quite his, the unnatural stillness in his posture, all screamed the truth she had been fighting. It wasn't Michael looking back at her. It was something else, peering out from behind his familiar face. A cold dread seeped into her bones, colder than any winter night. If the entity was using Michael, then her home, her sanctuary, was no longer safe. It was a trap, and she was already inside. "Michael," she whispered, her voice barely audible, a desperate plea to the man she loved to fight it, to break free. His head tilted, a movement too precise, too deliberate for the man who usually moved with an easy, natural grace. The smile widened just a fraction, but enough to send a shiver down her spine. "Jessica." The voice that came out was Michael's, but it was flat, devoid of the warmth, the affection she knew so well. It was a mimicry, a perfect imitation performed by something utterly alien. "You look tired." Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of terror. She took a step back, then another, her eyes darting around the room, searching for an escape, for a weapon, for anything. The air grew heavy, thick with an unseen presence, pressing down on her, stealing her breath. She could feel the entity's awareness, its focus narrowing on her. A predator savoring its prey. "What do you want?" she managed, her voice trembling but holding a thread of defiance. The eyes, Michael's beautiful blue eyes, seemed to swirl with an inner darkness. "What do I want?" The question was repeated, a mocking echo. "I want what was promised. What was offered." "I didn't offer anything," Jessica retorted, her mind racing. "We just looked." "A glance is all it takes," the voice purred, still Michael's, but now laced with a chilling amusement. "A single invitation, even an unwitting one, is enough for a door to open. And once opened, it cannot easily be closed." He started to walk towards her, slowly, deliberately, each step measured, unervingly silent. Jessica stumbled backward, her hand reaching behind her, fumbling for the doorknob. The cold metal felt like a lifeline. "You don't understand, do you?" Michael's body moved, but the entity spoke through him, its words painting a horrifying picture. "This vessel, this Michael, he's been quite accommodating. A strong will, but easily fractured when faced with its deepest fears. A little push, a little whisper, and the walls came tumbling down." She finally found the doorknob, twisting it frantically. It wouldn't turn. Locked. Panic flared, bright and hot. "Let me go!" she screamed, pushing against the door with all her might. It was useless. Michael was closer now, only a few feet away. His hand reached out, not to grab her, but to gently touch the wall beside her head. The touch lingered, sending a ripple of unnatural cold through the plaster. Such a fragile thing, the human mind. So easily swayed. So easily broken. "You won't break me," Jessica spat, though her voice was laced with a fear she couldn't hide. She knew she had to fight, not just for herself, but for Michael. For the hope that somewhere deep inside he was still there, struggling against this monstrous possession. "Oh, but you're already breaking," the entity chuckled, a sound that grated on her nerves. A sound that was Michael's laugh, but devoid of all joy, all humanity. The seeds of doubt, the gnawing fear, the isolation. All planted, all cultivated. "You've been alone for so long, haven't you? Even with him beside you. That's why you looked. That's why you sought something more. And found me." Jessica remembered the loneliness, the yearning for connection, the almost subconscious dissatisfaction in her life that had drawn her to the antique shop, to the mirror. Had it known? Had it sensed her vulnerability, her desire for something to fill a void she hadn't even fully acknowledged? "What do you want with me?" she demanded again, her voice cracking. "You are the key," the entity said, its voice growing deeper, a resonant hum that vibrated through the floorboards. "The anchor. The final piece. The prison has held me for centuries, a mere reflection, a shadow. But you, Jessica, you have the spark. The life. The body needed to truly walk among you." Her blood ran cold. It wanted her body. It wanted to possess her just like it had possessed Michael, but completely. Not just as a temporary vessel, but as its permanent form. "No," she breathed, shaking her head, tears welling in her eyes. "Never." Michael's face, twisted into a grotesque parody of concern, leaned in close. His breath, cold and stale, ghosted across her cheek. Such fierce resistance. It's almost admirable, but ultimately futile. He grabbed her arm, his grip like iron, his fingers digging into her flesh with surprising strength. Jessica cried out, struggling against him, but he held her fast. The familiar comfort of his touch was gone, replaced by a terrifying, alien force. "Where are you taking me?" she gasped, her eyes wide with terror as he began to drag her backward, away from the door, deeper into the house. "To where it all began," the entity stated, its voice now layered with an almost triumphant resonance, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "To the looking glass. The gateway." She knew exactly where he meant. The antique mirror, resting innocently in their living room, now a terrifying portal. She clawed at his arm, kicked at his shins, desperate to break free, but his strength was immense, unwavering. It wasn't Michael's strength, it was something far older, far more powerful. As he pulled her down the hallway, the house itself seemed to respond to the entity's presence. Lights flickered wildly, plunging the hallway into momentary darkness, then illuminating it with a sickly yellow glow. Shadows danced on the walls, stretching and contorting into monstrous shapes. A low, guttural moan echoed from the floorboards, as if the very structure of their home was groaning in protest. Michael's grip tightened, his eyes fixed forward, unseeing, as he dragged her towards the living room. Jessica could already see the faint, ethereal glow emanating from the living room doorway, a pulsating light that drew her in like a moth to a deadly flame. The air grew colder, heavy with a scent like ozone and old dust, a smell that scraped at the back of her throat and made her eyes water. She could feel the energy, raw and ancient, thrumming through the house, through Michael, through her. The prison wasn't just weakening, it was tearing itself apart. "It's almost time," the entity whispered, its voice now a chilling chorus of multiple voices, layered over Michael's. "The veil is thin. The world is ready." They reached the living room doorway. The mirror stood directly opposite, dominating the space, its ornate frame now shimmering with an unholy light. The surface of the glass was no longer reflective. It was a swirling vortex of deep, inky black and pulsating violet, like a bruised galaxy. It pulsed with a malevolent energy, beckoning, consuming. Jessica screamed, a raw, primal sound of pure terror, as Michael pulled her into the room. Her eyes were fixed on the mirror, on the swirling chaos within it, and she could feel an unbearable pull, a magnetic force drawing her towards it. It was like looking into a black hole, terrifying and utterly captivating, promising oblivion. "No, Michael, please," she begged, trying to appeal to any shred of him that might remain. For a fleeting second, Michael's head snapped to the side, his eyes briefly clearing, a flicker of pain and confusion crossing his face. A guttural gasp escaped his lips, a sound of agony. "Jess," he choked out, his voice weak, strained, almost lost. But then the darkness swirled back, consuming the brief spark of humanity. His eyes clouded over, the mask of the entity returning, stronger than before. The brief moment of clarity was gone, swallowed by the encroaching evil. "A valiant effort, old friend," the entity sneered through Michael's mouth, its voice dripping with contempt. "But ultimately useless. You are mine now, and soon she will be too." He tightened his grip on Jessica, pulling her closer to the mirror, closer to the swirling void. She could feel the cold emanating from the glass, a preternatural chill that seemed to seep into her very soul. The air around the mirror crackled with unseen energy, making the hairs on her arms stand on end. She saw shapes moving within the swirling darkness of the mirror, vague, indistinct forms that writhed and twisted, pressing against the surface, trying to break through. Tentacles, shadows, things that defied description, all yearning to escape. The entity wasn't alone. It was bringing something else with it. Or perhaps it was something else, a collective, a legion. Michael, or the thing wearing Michael's skin, was now directly in front of the mirror, dragging Jessica with him. The light from the mirror intensified, bathing them in its eerie glow. She could hear whispers, countless voices murmuring just beyond the threshold of hearing, a cacophony of ancient, forgotten tongues. "The time is now," the entity hissed, its voice echoing from the mirror itself, from Michael, from every corner of the room. The final step. Jessica felt a sudden, sharp pain as Michael's grip shifted, his fingers digging deeper into her arm, pulling her body forward. forcing her head towards the swirling vortex of the mirror. She could feel the suction, the irresistible pull, the terrifying promise of being consumed, of being dragged into that other place, into that other dimension. Her vision blurred, the room spinning around her, the whispers growing louder, more insistent. Her heart pounded, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. She was going to be pulled in. She was going to be lost. And Michael, her love, was the one dragging her to her doom. Emily's scream tore through her throat, a raw primal sound of pure terror. Her hands, slick with sweat, scrabbled against Michael's chest, pushing, clawing, desperate to break free from his unyielding grip. But his strength was otherworldly, his eyes, usually so warm and full of affection, now cold, distant, and utterly devoid of recognition. It wasn't Michael looking at her, not truly. It was something else, something ancient and hungry, peering out from behind his familiar face, using his body as a puppet. "Michael, no!" she choked out, her voice thin and reedy against the roar in her ears. The red glow pulsed, intensifying with each beat of her frantic heart, painting the room in hues of blood and fire. The whispers swirled around her, a vortex of distorted voices, some familiar, some alien, all murmuring the same insidious promise. Asterisk, join us. Forever. Peace. Asterisk. But Emily felt no peace. Only an icy dread that seeped into her bones. She could feel the mirror's pull, a physical tug on her very essence, like an invisible current dragging her towards a black abyss. Her feet slid on the polished floor, her resistance futile against the relentless force. She was being reeled in, inch by agonizing inch, towards the shimmering surface. Then a flicker, a memory sharp and sudden, piercing through the fog of terror. Mrs. Albright. The old woman's trembling hands, her wide haunted eyes. It shows you what you want, and then it takes what it wants. Emily had dismissed it as the ramblings of a senile old woman. Now the words echoed with chilling clarity, a prophecy fulfilling itself before her very eyes. She looked into Michael's eyes again, searching for any spark of the man she loved, and for a fleeting second she saw it. A flash of pain, a flicker of struggle deep within those cold depths. His brow furrowed, a faint tremor running through his arm, as if he too was fighting an internal battle. He wasn't entirely gone. There was still a part of him in there, trapped just as she was about to be. This realization ignited a desperate, furious strength within her. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for Michael. "Michael, fight it!" she screamed, her voice raw. "Don't let it take you. Don't let it take us." The grip on her wrists tightened, but the tremor in Michael's arm became more pronounced. The whispers shrieked, a discordant chorus of anger and frustration. The mirror pulsed violently, a ripple spreading across its surface as if disturbed by her defiance. The entity within was aware. It was reacting. Emily remembered their first encounter with the mirror, the way it had shown them their desires, their perfect life. It had promised them everything, only to demand everything in return. It had fed on their hopes, their dreams, their love, and now it was coming to collect. She focused on that flicker in Michael's eyes, pouring all her love, all her will, into that tiny spark. "Remember our first date, Michael? The little Italian place? You spilled wine on my dress and were so embarrassed, but you made me laugh until my sides hurt." She tried to ground him, to pull him back from the precipice, to remind him of them. The effect was immediate and startling. Michael's head jerked as if struck. A guttural sound, half growl, half gasp, ripped from his throat. His eyes, for a precious second, cleared. The cold, distant look vanished, replaced by a horrifying blend of confusion, pain, and recognition. "Emily," he rasped, his voice strained, unfamiliar. But the moment of clarity was brutally brief. The red light flared, brighter than ever, and Michael's face contorted in agony. The entity reasserted its control, a darker, more malevolent force pushing Michael's consciousness back into the shadows. His grip tightened again, his eyes clouding over once more, but this time Emily saw something new in them. A desperate plea, a silent scream for help from the Michael trapped within. The mirror's surface was no longer a flat reflection. It swirled like liquid, a dark vortex forming in its depths, pulling at her with an irresistible force. She could feel her physical body becoming lighter, her senses blurring at the edges. The whispers were no longer just sounds. They were thoughts, sensations, a flood of fragmented memories and desires that weren't her own, invading her mind. She saw flashes of other faces, other lives, other souls that had been consumed by the mirror. A young woman dressed in Victorian attire, weeping for a lost love. A stern-faced man in colonial garb, clutching a ledger, driven by greed. A child reaching for a toy, all drawn in by their deepest desires, all lost. This wasn't just about taking her life. It was about taking her identity, absorbing her into its collective, eternal prison. The thought galvanized her. She wouldn't become another face in its endless gallery of victims. Her gaze darted around the room, desperate for anything, any object, any flaw in the mirror's overwhelming power. Her eyes landed on the antique ornate frame, the dark carved wood that bordered the shimmering glass. It was old, very old, and she remembered Mrs. Albright mentioning its history, something about it being passed down through generations. Was there a weakness there? A clue? She thrashed harder, her body twisting, trying to find leverage. Michael's grip was like iron bands, but his movements were stiff, almost mechanical. It was as if the entity was focusing all its power on pulling her in, leaving Michael's physical body with just enough control to hold her. Suddenly, a sharp metallic tang filled the air, mingling with the scent of dust and fear. Emily felt a searing pain in her left wrist. In her struggle, her wedding ring, a simple gold band Michael had given her, had scraped against the rough edge of the mirror's frame. A thin line of blood welled up, a stark crimson against her pale skin. And then something extraordinary happened. Where her blood touched the ancient wood of the frame, a faint, almost imperceptible tremor ran through it. The red glow from the mirror flickered, momentarily dimming. The whispers paused, a sudden, unnerving silence falling over the room, broken only by Emily's ragged breaths and the frantic pounding of her heart. Michael's grip faltered. His eyes, though still clouded, seemed to widen slightly. It was as if a jolt had gone through him. The mirror itself seemed to recoil, a ripple of disturbance spreading outward from the point where Emily's blood had touched the frame. It was a fraction of a second, a blink and you miss it phenomenon, but it was enough. Enough to give Emily a sliver of hope, a desperate, wild idea. The mirror was powerful, but it wasn't invincible. And her blood, her connection to the real world, to Michael, to life itself, seemed to be its anathema. With renewed vigor, fueled by this tiny spark of understanding, she fought with every ounce of her being. She twisted her wrist, intentionally dragging the cut against the frame, letting more of her blood seep into the ancient wood. The red glow flickered more violently, the whispers returning with a harsh, angry hiss, no longer seductive but full of malice. Michael groaned, a sound of agony, as if her actions were causing him immense pain. His body spasmed, the strength in his arms wavering. The entity was struggling to maintain its hold, its smooth control over him breaking. "You won't take him!" Emily screamed, her voice raw but resolute, a challenge thrown into the face of the ancient evil. "You won't take us!" She continued to press her bleeding wrist against the frame, desperate to widen the breach, to exploit this unexpected weakness. The mirror roared, a sound that wasn't a sound, but a vibration that shook the very foundations of the house, rattling the windows and making the floorboards tremble beneath her feet. The vortex in its depths spun faster, a furious, chaotic maelstrom. Suddenly, Michael's grip completely gave way. He stumbled back, clutching his head, his face contorted in a mask of pure agony. The red light emanating from the mirror pulsed erratically, like a dying heart. The whispers fractured, breaking into disjointed, screeching fragments, a cacophony of lost voices battling against an unseen force. Emily fell to the floor, breathing heavily, her heart threatening to burst from her chest. She looked up, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and a fragile, nascent triumph. Michael was slumped against the wall, his chest heaving, his eyes still unfocused but no longer possessing that chilling, alien coldness. He looked utterly drained, as if he had just run a marathon of the soul. The mirror, however, was far from defeated. Its surface, though no longer swirling with a vortex, was now a turbulent sea of dark, shifting shadows. The red light, though weakened, still pulsed malevolently. It was wounded, certainly, but still very much alive, still very much a threat. And it had shown its hand. It had revealed its weakness. Blood, life, a direct connection to the living world. Emily scrambled backwards, away from the mirror, her eyes fixed on Michael. He was breathing, he was here, but he wasn't fully back. He was in a state of shock, his mind reeling from whatever horrors he had just endured or participated in. The room was silent once more, but it was a heavy, suffocating silence, pregnant with an unspoken threat. The air crackled with residual energy, a thick, palpable tension that promised the battle was far from over. Emily knew one thing with absolute certainty: she had to find a way to destroy that mirror, not just for herself but for Michael, for every soul it had ever consumed, and for every soul it still threatened to devour. The fight had just begun, and she had just found her weapon. The weapon wasn't a physical object, a magic spell, or some ancient artifact. It was knowledge, a terrible, liberating truth that had settled in Emily's mind with the weight of a lead coffin and the clarity of a diamond. The mirror didn't just reflect. It fed. It wasn't merely a portal to a twisted dimension, but an entity, a parasite that mirrored back the deepest fissures of a soul, then widened them, consuming the essence of those who looked too long, who yearned too deeply for the impossible, or who were crushed by the weight of their own regret. It thrived on sorrow, on self-loathing, on the insidious whisper of what if. To destroy it, she wouldn't need a hammer or a ritual. She would need to starve it. Emily's mind raced, connecting fragmented pieces of information she dismissed as mere folklore or the ramblings of a broken man. David's frantic notes, filled with arcane symbols and desperate theories about emotional resonance and psychic vampirism. Michael's passing comment about the antique dealer who'd sold him the mirror, a man who'd seemed unervingly eager to part with it, whispering about bad energy that clung to it like moss. Even the sense of suffocating dread that had always permeated the house, not just from the mirror itself, but from the cumulative despair of its victims. The mirror had projected distorted versions of herself, her fears, her failures. It had shown her Michael, not as he was, but as a phantom, a lure, a promise of reunion that was nothing more than a trick, designed to ensnare her further. Her weapon, therefore, was to refuse to play its game. To look into it, yes, but to see through its illusions. To acknowledge her fears, but not to feed them. To embrace her imperfections, rather than letting the mirror twist them into self-hatred. It was a psychological war, a battle for her very soul, and the souls of those it held captive. She spent the next few days in a blur of intense, almost feverish preparation. Not physical but mental. She revisited every memory of Michael, every moment of joy, every argument, every quiet understanding. She didn't shy away from the pain of his loss, but she refused to let it consume her. Instead, she focused on the love, the strength that had bound them, the resilience they had built together. She meditated for hours, forcing her mind to acknowledge her own flaws, the moments of selfishness, the times she doubted herself, the lingering guilt from past mistakes. But then, crucially, she'd release them. She wouldn't repress them. She'd accept them as part of her journey, part of what made her human, but she would deny them the power to define her or drag her into despair. She became an observer of her own thoughts, separating her authentic self from the mirror's insidious projections. She read old psychology texts she'd found in David's study, looking for anything that touched upon the power of perception, of belief, of the mind's ability to shape reality. She found obscure references to ancient practices of mirror gazing that weren't about divination, but about self-confrontation, about stripping away illusions to reveal an inner truth. One particular passage, a faded annotation in David's hand next to a description of a mental shield, caught her eye. The parasite starves when its host sees itself whole, without desire for the reflected lie. This was it. Her strategy. To present a whole, unfragmented self. To desire nothing from the mirror, to ask nothing of it, to need nothing it could offer. It was a radical act of self-acceptance, a defiant refusal to engage with the very mechanism of its power. When she finally felt ready, a strange calm settled over her. It wasn't the absence of fear, but the presence of an unwavering resolve that dwarfed it. The old house, which had once felt like a tomb, now felt like a battlefield. The air was thick, heavy with an almost palpable sense of anticipation. Every shadow seemed to deepen. Every creak of the floorboards echoed with a malevolent intent. It was as if the mirror sensed her approach, sensed the shift in her energy, and was actively trying to deter her. She walked towards the room where it waited, her footsteps deliberate, her breathing even. The temperature dropped several degrees as she neared the doorway, the air growing frigid, biting at her exposed skin. A faint, almost imperceptible hum vibrated through the floor, a low guttural thrum that seemed to resonate deep within her bones. Stepping into the room, Emily stopped, her gaze fixed on the ornate, gilded frame. The mirror pulsed with a faint, sickly green light, a low glow that seemed to emanate from within its depths. The surface, usually so still, now shimmered with a restless energy, like disturbed water. Within it, reflections twisted and writhed, not yet coherent images, but swirling patterns of darkness and light, hinting at the chaos the mirror contained. She stood directly before it, taking a deep breath, grounding herself. The very air around her seemed to crackle, charged with an unseen tension. Then the mirror responded. Slowly, deliberately, the swirling chaos within its surface began to coalesce. First, fragments of her own face, distorted, eyes wide with terror, mouth agape in a silent scream. Then images of her failures, magnified, made grotesque. A missed opportunity at work, a harsh word spoken in anger, a moment of weakness she'd long tried to forget. The mirror was testing her, trying to elicit the familiar pangs of regret and self-condemnation. Emily didn't flinch. She observed the images, acknowledged them, but refused to feel them as the mirror intended. "I see you," she whispered, her voice steady, "and I see what you want me to be. But that is not me. That is your twisted echo." The mirror's response was swift and brutal. The images shifted, dissolving into a scene that ripped at her heart with agonizing precision. Michael. He stood there, vibrant and alive, in their living room. He smiled, that warm, reassuring smile she missed more than anything. He held out his hand, his eyes filled with an unbearable tenderness, beckoning her, promising reunion. The reflection was so perfect, so real, she could almost feel the warmth of his hand, hear the soft cadence of his voice. An involuntary gasp escaped her lips. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of longing and despair. Her hand instinctively reached out, trembling, towards the impossibly real image. This was the ultimate temptation, the cruelest lure. Every fiber of her being screamed to step into that reflection, to embrace him, to finally be free of the crushing grief. But then a tiny flicker of memory, a spark of clarity, ignited in her mind. This wasn't Michael. This was a projection, a mimicry, a trap. The real Michael, the one she loved, would never want her to sacrifice herself to such a hungry void. He would want her to live, to fight, to be free. With a superhuman effort, Emily pulled her hand back, clenching it into a fist. She closed her eyes for a brief, agonizing moment, allowing the wave of grief and longing to wash over her, but refusing to drown in it. She focused on the real Michael, the memories untainted by the mirror's deceit. His laughter, the feel of his hand in hers, the quiet strength of his presence. That was her anchor. She opened her eyes, looking directly into the mirror. The image of Michael still stood there, his smile faltering slightly, a subtle hint of confusion in his reflected eyes. "You are not him," Emily stated, her voice firm, resolute. "You are a lie, a hunger, and I refuse to feed you." As she spoke, the reflected Michael wavered, the edges of his form blurring like smoke. The mirror shuddered, and the sickly green light intensified, pulsing erratically as if in distress. The temperature in the room plummeted further, and a strong unseen wind whipped around her, tugging at her hair and clothes, trying to push her back, to break her stance. The mirror unleashed its full assault. The images within its depths became a maelstrom of terror. Michael's face contorted into a decaying skull, his eyes hollow, accusing. Emily saw herself, old and withered, utterly alone, haunted by madness. She saw shadows clawing at her from all sides, heard whispers of every insecurity she'd ever harbored, magnified into deafening screams. The air grew heavy, pressing down on her, trying to crush her spirit, to drive her to her knees in despair. It was trying to drain her, to make her feel utterly hopeless, worthless, ready to surrender. But Emily stood her ground. "You feed on despair," she gasped, her voice strained against the invisible forces. "But I choose hope." She clenched her teeth, forcing herself to look at the grotesque images, but refusing to internalize them. "You feed on regret, but I choose acceptance. You feed on fear, but I choose courage." Each word was a struggle, a profound act of defiance. The mirror roared, a soundless psychic shriek that vibrated through her very bones. The spectral winds intensified, throwing objects across the room. David's scattered notes, an old armchair. Dust swirled violently. The mirror's green light flared, then dimmed, then flared again unevenly like a dying ember. The illusions, though still terrifying, seemed less solid, more ethereal, flickering at the edges. She was starving it. Every refusal to engage, every act of self-acceptance, every defiant declaration, was a blow against its parasitic existence. The mirror was fighting back with everything it had, but it was weakening. She could feel it, a subtle shift in the oppressive atmosphere, a momentary hesitation in its onslaught. The fight was far from over, a grueling siege rather than a quick battle, but Emily had found its weakness. And for the first time since Michael's disappearance, she felt a surge of something she hadn't dared to hope for. A glimmer of victory. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for Michael, and for every soul trapped within that hungry glass. She had held her ground, and the mirror for the first time was on the defensive. The mirror for the first time was on the defensive. A shudder ran through its surface, not a ripple of illusion, but a genuine tremor, as if the very glass was struggling to contain the entity within. The distorted reflections of Emily's fears and Michael's suffering flickered, losing their sharp edges, becoming hazy, less potent. A cold, guttural hiss devoid of any human language filled the air, a sound of pure, unadulterated rage and surprise. It was the sound of a predator, accustomed to effortless hunts, suddenly finding its prey fighting back with unexpected ferocity. Emily felt a surge of adrenaline, not fear but pure, unyielding resolve. She had breached its defenses. She had found a weakness. The mirror's power wasn't absolute. It wasn't omnipotent. It fed on her internal landscape, yes, but it also relied on her reaction to that landscape. By refusing to succumb, by transforming her fear into defiance, she had starved it. The realization hit her with the force of a physical blow. The mirror didn't just reflect, it amplified. It took her nascent fears, her quiet desires, her unaddressed traumas, and blew them up into monstrous, inescapable realities. But if she refused to let them grow, if she choked them at the root, the mirror had nothing left to amplify. It was an echo chamber, and she had stopped screaming. The swirling vortex of images within the glass intensified, not in strength but in frantic desperation. It was throwing everything it had at her, a chaotic kaleidoscope of her deepest regrets and suppressed anxieties. Her childhood fear of abandonment, a fleeting memory of a car accident she'd witnessed as a teen, the gnawing insecurity about her career choices, all flashed before her, each one vying for her attention, trying to drag her back into the mire of self-doubt. But Emily, now seeing the mechanism behind the madness, stood firm. She acknowledged each image, each fleeting thought, but she didn't engage with it. She recognized them as her own, but she refused to let the mirror use them as weapons. She was an observer, no longer a participant in its cruel game. Then a new kind of image emerged, one that momentarily shook her resolve. It wasn't a reflection of her past, but a projection of her future, twisting her hopes into grotesque mockeries. She saw Michael, but not the Michael she loved, vibrant and full of life. Instead, he was a hollowed-out shell, his eyes vacant, his skin pale, a puppet dancing on unseen strings. And beside him, another figure, herself, but withered, ancient, her spirit broken, forever trapped in a desolate, colorless world, endlessly staring into the very mirror that had consumed them. It was a vision of eternal despair, a future where the mirror had won, and their souls were merely decorative pieces in its endless collection. A cold dread threatened to paralyze her, but then she remembered the tremor, the hiss, the mirror's momentary retreat. This was a desperate gambit. This was the mirror trying to reassert its dominance, to break her will with the ultimate despair. But she had seen its fear. She had seen its weakness. This vision, however horrifying, was just another illusion, another attempt to make her give up. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, taking a deep, shuddering breath, then opened them again, fixing her gaze upon the tormented reflection of Michael. "You don't get to decide our future," she whispered, her voice raw but firm. "You don't get to break us." As she spoke, a faint, almost imperceptible shift occurred within the mirror. The image of the desolate future wavered, like a poorly rendered projection struggling to maintain focus. And then something else began to emerge, from the very depths of the glass, something ancient and terrible, yet surprisingly vulnerable. It wasn't a reflection, but a glimpse into the mirror's true nature. She saw fleeting images, not of her life but of other lives. Fragments of forgotten faces, whispers of languages lost to time, echoes of emotions that transcended centuries. She saw gilded halls, dusty attics, grand ballrooms, and humble cottages. The mirror wasn't just a recent acquisition. It was an ancient, malevolent entity that had passed through countless hands, collecting souls, feeding on the despair and vanity of generations. It was a parasite, growing stronger with each life it consumed. Each reflection it twisted into a weapon. And then she saw its core, a pulsating dark void at the very heart of the glass, shielded by layers of collected consciousness. It wasn't a physical heart, but an energetic one, a point of pure hunger. It pulsed with an insatiable emptiness, a void that could never be filled, only temporarily placated by the essence of living beings. This wasn't just a mirror. It was a hungry, sentient trap, a dimension of pure consumption that had found a way to manifest in their world. But within that core, amidst the crushing darkness, Emily perceived a faint, almost imperceptible flicker. It wasn't light, but an absence of darkness, a momentary lapse in its otherwise perfect void. It was the same tremor she had felt when she pushed back. The mirror wasn't invulnerable. It had a weakness, a point where its endless hunger could be interrupted, its parasitic existence severed. The realization struck her like a lightning bolt, clear and undeniable. The mirror fed on reflection, yes, but it also fed on connection. It drew power from the emotional links between people, from the love, the fear, the desire that bound them. It was why Michael's sacrifice had been so potent, why her own love for him was such a powerful weapon against it. But that connection could also be its undoing. If the connection was severed, if the mirror was starved of its emotional sustenance, it would weaken. But how do you sever an emotional connection that transcends dimensions? She looked around the room frantically, her eyes scanning the familiar objects, the dusty antique furniture, the faded wallpaper, the very air thick with the mirror's malevolent presence. There had to be something, some clue, some forgotten lore. The previous owners, the stories, the whispers of the house itself. She remembered Mrs. Albright's strange warnings, the fear in her eyes, the desperate plea to not look into the mirror. Mrs. Albright hadn't just been afraid of the mirror. She had been trying to protect others from it. Then her gaze fell upon the small, ornate silver locket that Michael had given her, still clutched tightly in her hand. It was a simple, sentimental piece, but it was theirs. It represented their bond, their love, their shared life. And it was real. It wasn't a reflection. It was a tangible anchor to her reality, to her love, to herself. A daring, almost insane idea began to form in her mind. A desperate gamble that could either destroy the mirror or consume her entirely. The mirror amplified, it twisted, it consumed. But what if she could feed it something it couldn't digest? Something pure, something uncorruptible, something that would cause it to choke on its own insatiable hunger? What if she could force it to reflect something so profoundly not its own nature, that it would shatter? The mirror, sensing her shift in thought, sensing the dangerous new idea taking root, roared with renewed fury. The glass began to crackle, thin fissures spreading across its surface like spiderwebs. The temperature in the room plummeted, and the air crackled with malevolent energy. It was no longer playing games. It was preparing for a final devastating assault, a last-ditch effort to break her, to claim her, to extinguish the spark of defiance that threatened its ancient existence. The distorted faces of Michael and countless others within the glass screamed in silent agony, their pleas echoing in her mind. Emily knew this was it. This was the moment of truth. She had glimpsed its weakness. She had formulated a desperate plan. Now she just had to execute it. She clutched the locket tighter, its cool metal a comforting weight in her palm. Her heart pounded, a frantic drumbeat against her ribs, but her resolve was iron. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for Michael, for every soul trapped within that hungry glass. She had held her ground, and the mirror for the first time was on the defensive. Now she would go on the offensive. She would go on the offensive. Emily gripped the heavy iron poker, its cold weight a steadying anchor in the swirling chaos that was the old living room. The mirror pulsed, a dark, hungry eye, no longer projecting tempting visions, but a raw, unbridled fury. It had been challenged. Its ancient hunger had been denied, and now it thrashed, a predator cornered. Emily knew she couldn't outmuscle it, couldn't out-trick it with illusions. Its game was deception. Its strength derived from the deepest desires and darkest fears. But she had clarity now, forged in terror and love. She had seen through its lies, witnessed its true nature. That was its vulnerability. "You feed on us," she whispered, her voice surprisingly steady, echoing in the oppressive silence. "You twist our reflections, devour our dreams, leave us hollow." The mirror rippled, a dark current flowing across its surface, like ink dissolving in water. It was reacting, listening. She took a step forward, the iron poker pointing not at the glass, but at the void behind it. You crave a reflection, don't you? To see yourself in our despair. The air grew heavy, thick with an unseen pressure, pushing against her. She felt a phantom chill pierce her bones, a whisper of countless forgotten voices crying out from within the mirror's depths. It was trying to overwhelm her, to break her spirit with the weight of its victims. But Emily pushed back. "No more," she declared, her voice rising, cutting through the spectral chorus. "I won't let you see yourself in me. I won't give you that satisfaction." She raised the iron poker, not to strike, but to hold it aloft, a conductor of her will. You feed on desire, on vanity, on the desperate longing for what isn't real. But what if there's nothing left to reflect? What if the surface you crave is utterly, undeniably empty? The mirror roared, a silent scream that vibrated through the very floorboards. Images flashed across its surface with blinding speed. Michael laughing in a sun-drenched field, her own face younger, carefree, a vision of them growing old together, surrounded by warmth and happiness. Temptations, promises, all designed to make her want, to make her look, to draw her back into its web. But Emily's gaze remained fixed, unwavering, not on the illusions, but at the dark, swirling heart she now perceived within. She closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep, fortifying breath. When she opened them, her focus was absolute. She wasn't looking at the mirror. She was looking through it, past the shimmering glass, past the swirling vortex of its power, straight into the nothingness that defined its true being. And then she did something truly unexpected. She began to speak, not to the mirror, but about the mirror. "You are old," she stated, her voice calm, deliberate. "Ancient. You have seen empires rise and fall, generations of lives, each one a meal for your insatiable hunger." The mirror pulsed erratically. "You have no name, no purpose beyond consumption. You are a void, a parasite, a lie that pretends to be truth." As she spoke, she felt a strange shift. The mirror's projections flickered, losing their vividness, becoming translucent, as if her words were dissolving the very fabric of its illusions. The phantom chill receded, replaced by a growing warmth that emanated from within her, fueled by her resolve. "You show us what we want to see, what we fear to see," she continued, her voice gaining power. "But you never show us yourself, because there's nothing there. Just an empty space, a gaping maw." She took another step, closer now, so close she could feel the cold, unnatural hum radiating from the glass. It was fighting back, trying to project a wave of pure, paralyzing dread. "You reflect our light, our shadows, but you have none of your own," she pressed on, her gaze piercing. "You are the ultimate narcissist, yet you possess no self, a hunger without a stomach, a reflection without a soul." She raised the iron poker, not to smash the glass, but to point it directly at the center of the mirror, holding it steady like a dowsing rod pointing to a hidden spring. And what does a mirror reflect when there is nothing left to see? When its audience refuses to play its game? When it is forced to reflect only its own barren reality? A terrible sound erupted from the mirror, a high-pitched keening that wasn't sound at all, but a vibration that threatened to tear her eardrums. The glass itself began to crack, not from an impact, but from within, thin lines spiderwebbing across its surface like veins. It was as if her words, her unwavering truth, were a corrosive acid, eating away at its very essence. The images of Michael, of her past, of tempting futures, dissolved into nothingness. The swirling darkness within the glass began to recede, pulling back, contracting. It was losing its grip. It was shrinking. Emily pressed her advantage, pouring her will into her words. "You are nothing," she screamed, a raw, guttural cry that ripped from her throat. "You are an illusion, and I see through you. I see nothing, and that is your end." The mirror gave one final, shuddering groan, a sound of profound agony and defeat. The cracks multiplied, spreading like lightning across the surface, until with a deafening crack, the entire glass shattered inwards, not outwards. It imploded, collapsing into itself, drawing the swirling darkness and the echoes of countless voices into its own destruction. A sudden blinding flash of pure white light erupted from the now empty frame, so intense it forced Emily to shield her eyes. The light pulsed once, twice, then faded, leaving behind only the broken shards of glass scattered on the floor, and a gaping empty space where the mirror had once stood. The old ornate frame remained, but the reflective surface was gone, replaced by a plain, dark backing. The oppressive atmosphere in the room vanished instantly, replaced by a sudden, jarring silence. The air felt lighter, cleaner, as if a great weight had been lifted. Emily stood panting, the iron poker still clutched in her hand, her body trembling from the sheer exertion of the mental and emotional battle. A soft groan broke the silence. Emily's head snapped up. It came from the direction of the old armchair where Michael had been slumped. She rushed over, dropping the poker. Michael stirred. His eyes fluttered open, blinking against the dim light filtering into the room. He looked disoriented, confused, his face pale and drawn, but the vacant stare was gone. His eyes, though weary, were unmistakably his own. "Eminencia." "Emily?" he rasped, his voice hoarse as if he hadn't spoken in years. Tears sprang to Emily's eyes. "Michael!" She fell to her knees beside him, pulling him into a tight embrace. He was weak, disoriented, but he was there. His warmth, his scent, the familiar feel of his arms hesitantly wrapping around her. What happened?" he mumbled, trying to sit up. "I feel like I've been asleep for a decade." Emily helped him sit upright, leaning against the back of the chair. "It's over, Michael. It's really over." She stroked his hair, tears streaming down her face, a mixture of relief, exhaustion, and profound joy. "The mirror. It's gone." He looked at the empty frame, a flicker of fear in his eyes, then back at her. "The mirror. I remember a dream, a terrible dream, always seeing myself but never truly seeing anything." He shivered. "And others, so many others, trapped, like shadows." "They're free now," Emily whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You're all free." She believed it. When the mirror shattered inwards, absorbing its own darkness, she felt a profound release, a sense of countless souls finally finding peace. Over the next few days, Michael recovered slowly. Doctors attributed his catatonic state to extreme stress and a rare psychological break, a diagnosis Emily knew was only a fraction of the truth. He had no clear memory of the mirror's events, only fragmented nightmares of endless reflections and suffocating loneliness. They decided not to press him, to let him heal. The old house, however, they couldn't stay in. Despite the mirror's destruction, a lingering chill remained, a memory of the darkness that had resided there. They sold it quickly and without looking back, to a developer who planned to tear it down and build modern condos. Emily felt a strange sense of vindication knowing that the ground where the mirror had stood would soon be paved over, its ancient power utterly erased. They moved to a new town far away, a fresh start. Michael slowly regained his strength, his laughter returning, though sometimes in quiet moments, Emily would catch him staring at his own reflection a little too long, a flicker of unease in his eyes. She understood. The experience had left an indelible mark on both of them. Emily herself found a new purpose. The terror had transformed her, sharpened her perception. She started volunteering, helping people struggling with self-image and self-worth, reminding them that true value came from within, not from external validation. She often spoke about seeing beyond the surface, though she never revealed the full, terrifying truth of her journey. The incident with the mirror became a private, shared trauma, a secret they carried. They learned to live with the echoes, the occasional unsettling feeling when they passed a particularly ornate antique shop, or when a mirror caught their reflection in an unexpected way. But the fear had been replaced by a quiet strength, a profound appreciation for their connection, and a deep understanding of the subtle, often dangerous power of perception. Sometimes late at night, Emily would wonder about the mirror. What was it truly? An ancient entity? A portal? A manifestation of collective human vanity and despair? She never found a definitive answer, and perhaps it was better that way. The truth, she realized, wasn't always about understanding every detail, but about recognizing the danger, confronting it, and choosing to live authentically, to reflect only the best of herself, and to protect the light within those she loved. The mirror was gone, its hunger stilled, but the lesson remained, etched into their very souls. Be careful what you look into. Sometimes the deepest darkness isn't what you see reflected back, but the emptiness that lies behind the glass, waiting to consume you. And sometimes the only way to defeat it is to refuse to give it anything to reflect at all. This was the story of the mirror they shouldn't have looked into, and a reminder that some reflections once seen can never truly be unseen.